to dating as a therapist is also really challenging. Like it
Sure.
has its
Yeah.
own pieces. Yeah, there's this growth. And I think there's so much growth that happens in that healthy relationship, right? I think
Mhm.
you know probably more than anyone that there's an amount of healing that we can do on our own when we're single. And then we're gonna get into that relationship and it's gonna trigger all the stuff that can't be
Oh,
triggered when you're single.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that because there's a lot of people who, especially in today's world where we're talking, at people and what you should do and what is healthy. But if you're talking about relationships and you have not been in one, or you're
Right.
not, you don't have to be in one now, of course, because you've had relationships. But if you're talking a lot about love and relationships, but you have
Right.
very little experience, if you haven't put many
Right.
reps in,
Right.
it's hard to get buy-in because I'm like, well, there's a difference between theory and what you know and
Exactly.
actually because
Exactly.
yeah,
And that's
love can hijack us very fast. I don't care how
it's
much you've grown or
yeah,
healed.
and those triggers are just can be so intense, right?
I'm John Kim, a licensed therapist who used to be a miserable fuck before going on a hero's journey and turning expired relationships into revelations. I use my story to help others come with you instead of at you, unrehearsed on purpose, because self help doesn't have to be polished or complicated, just honest.
Rebecca, hey, can we pretend like we're not recording because I'm such a fan of people coming into the room
Yeah.
and recording everything that they don't get to hear?
Yes. Yes.
So
I will
let's
do
pretend like
my
we're not
best
recording.
to pretend that we're not
Yes.
recording. Yes.
How are you? How's your day? What's going on in Rebecca's life?
Oh, today's been good. It's been a bit of all over the place, to be honest.
Do you see clients today?
I do. Most of my clients today are in the afternoon. So I
Mm.
have a handful of clients in having a really hard time right now. So reached out to me for check-ins. I actually had another interview this morning for another podcast guest appearance, which was
Nice.
exciting. Yeah. And then working on the marketing for my courses, my social media, and then I'll have clients this afternoon.
All the things you don't learn in grad school.
Yes, truly, truly.
Do you prefer in person or do you prefer now, which has kind of become the standard, which is online?
There's aspects of both that I enjoy. So I actually don't do in person right now, mostly because I didn't have enough clients wanting in person. I rented an office near me for 6 months and no one wanted to meet there. So I let the office go. So all of my work
Yeah.
is virtual right now, but I do miss the in person. I wish I could have like 1 or 2 days a week in person and the rest
Yeah.
virtual would be ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that when I had a full practice, I couldn't just sit in front of a camera and just do session after session. It wasn't fair to my clients because, by session number 4, you're not showing up the same. You're just exhausted. And so I would switch it up and I loved meeting people at coffee shops, which sounds kind of
Coffee
strange, but
shops. Yeah. That's
yes, in the
unique.
corner somewhere, maybe in the patio.
Yeah.
So there's some privacy.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It was so refreshing as opposed to like in the office or online.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway,
it's funny as you say that too, because the office doesn't feel good to me either. Like a coffee shop sounds a lot better. There's something really
yeah.
stuffy about an office that
Yes.
feels contained, but not in a good way. Like it feels like it's
Yeah.
limited. Like we're hiding away in this room. So yeah, my dream is to have a house with like a garden and to have people able to come out to have like a ADU option that's inside or like the garden area outside and we can do
Well,
sessions there.
so that was the blueprint when I started before social media was invented. And every therapist I had at that time, I just went to their house and there was an ADU or home office. But now I don't know, especially if you're active on social, I don't know if you want people to know where you live,
That's
and they're like
also a
inside your house.
consideration, right, right. Or it's like, do you get another space somewhere, like a really small condo or something that's just used as this office space with yeah, it's a real consideration. Yeah.
Yes. If you've been following our series, this is the final one. This is number 3. Rebecca, thank you so much, by the way, for just even starting this dialogue, this topic. It's so important. It impacts everyone. And I think when we talk about trauma, a lot of people think, well, I haven't been abused, or, we associate trauma with like war or sexual
Yeah.
abuse or
Yeah.
some kind of like physical abuse. And,
Yeah.
and I feel like everyone has had trauma if you
Yes.
just in your
Yes.
life, no matter what. So.
100%, especially in this day and age with, honestly, with capitalism, right? Like, even the best intentioned parents are exhausted,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
not gonna be attuned to the extent that we actually really need, that kids really need.
Yes. Yeah. So how your attachment wounds, how trauma in your childhood impacts you as an adult, and also how you show up in relationships, which is a very important topic. So this is the third installment. This is number 3. And if you haven't listened to 1 or 2, please go back and listen to them. We are airing these in order, so you don't have to dig that much. But before we begin, I asked Rebecca, hey, I'm going to ask you some questions. They're going to be personal questions. I didn't tell you what the questions were. And she's
I
like, all
do
right,
not know
bring
the
it.
question, yes. I do
Yes.
not know them. Here we go.
And I'm doing this, yeah, I'm doing this not to fuck with her. I'm doing this because it lines up with my mission of humanizing the therapist.
Yeah,
Okay, we're just
okay,
gonna do 5.
okay,
I'm doing a series with asking 21 questions, which is long, but let's do 5. Okay,
okay.
question number 1.
Yeah.
What's something you've healed in others that you still haven't really healed in yourself? Oh,
That's
deep end right away.
okay, well, give me a moment. Ooh, yeah, my most vulnerable real answer to that question is that I'm single. I'm not in a relationship. And I think I have done a lot of healing, but I don't know. I've just been in this place where I have not met a person that feels like that we could really be lifelong partners that I want to
Mm,
move forward with. And one of the interesting things about my job is I mean, I've had so many different experiences with clients ranging from, they come in, they're in a relationship that is, to me, very clearly a learning relationship for them, right? That
mm,
this isn't going to be their person, but they're in this relationship to really learn about themselves, heal themselves, and they will outgrow it and find the next person. And we go through all of that. Then they break up. Then they're single for a while. Then they meet their next person. And then that next relationship is wonderful. And I am watching all of that while I am still not in a relationship. But I'm holding and guiding them through that process.
So do you feel like because you're not in a relationship, do you feel fraudulent? Do you feel like an imposter? Or do you feel like
It's not
why do you need to be in a relationship?
it's not fraudulent. It's not an imposter because I watch it work, right? I watch it happen. I know I'm really good at what I'm doing. I think when you're asking me like, what am I healing in others that isn't healed in myself? Like I am healing that in others. I am helping others heal themselves in that way, right?
Why is being in a relationship healed and not being in a relationship feel unhealed? I guess that's what I'm
Oh,
asking. Like, why is there a correlation between the 2?
yeah, that's a good point. Like, it's not that I'm necessarily unhealed, but maybe it would be, like, stuck in a way that is they're moving. There's some energy flow in their life
Got
that
it.
is moving towards this more aligned relationship where mine hasn't moved in that way. Yeah, and I mean, there's fears that come up around dating. There's fears
Mhm.
around getting stuck in something I don't wanna be in. I've been spending a lot of time really, like, being with that. What does it mean to date? Dating as a therapist is also really challenging. Like, it has its own pieces. Yeah, there's this growth, and I think there's so much growth that happens in that healthy relationship, right? I think probably more than anyone that there's a amount of healing that we can do on our own when we're
Yes.
single. And then we're gonna get into that relationship, and it's gonna trigger all the stuff that can't be
Oh,
triggered when you're single.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that because there's a lot of people who, especially in today's world where we're talking, at people and what you should do and what is healthy. But if you're talking about relationships and you have not been in one, or
Right.
you don't have to be in one now, of course, because you've had relationships. But if you're talking a lot about love and relationships, but you have
Right.
very little experience, if you haven't put many
Right.
reps in,
Right.
it's hard to get buy-in because I'm like, well, there's a difference between theory and what you know and
Exactly.
actually because
Exactly.
yeah,
And that's
love can hijack us very fast. I don't care how
it's
much you've grown or
yeah,
healed.
and those triggers are just can be so intense, right? And that's probably what you mean by hijack. And so for me, it's been a few years since I've been in a relationship, and so I've examined all the triggers that I went through in that relationship and where can I grow, and I do feel quite healed, a lot more healed than I was, single prior to meeting my ex. But I know there's more healing for me as I would step into a new relationship, and I watch that happen for my clients, and I'm able to still hold that with my clients and help them through those triggers and those wounds that come up, and how to engage with the self and their partner in relationship while still feeling like I don't know that I have a handle on this in myself, right? As soon as when I do meet my next person, I know those wounds will come up for me, and that's going to be
Yeah.
its own process. So,
Thank you for being so honest and vulnerable.
yeah.
If it makes you feel better, I was single for 5 years, a stretch of 5 years. This is when I wrote Single on Purpose, and I felt scared. I think I felt fraudulent because I was like the relationship guy talking a lot about relationships, and I wasn't in one, so I felt like I didn't have a right to talk about relationships. So I just felt, like you said, stuck, and I was
Mhm.
helping people, and they were getting unstuck. I feel like the kid that got held back, left
Yes.
behind.
Yes, that is how I felt, and
Right.
I mean, I've
Right.
had, yeah, clients that come in and they're in the same position. They're like, "I've been single for so long. I really want a relationship," and I'm like, "Let's look at what's holding you back," and like, 6 months in, they're like, "I met someone," and then they're engaged
Yeah.
and they're having a baby, and I'm like, "Hello?" Like, what about me?
Well, part
And
of
it's
this
so
we have to move on
interesting.
because of
Yeah,
the time, but a part of this is, society's ticking clock. A part of this is buying into
absolutely.
the construct, right?
Yes.
Which is very hard not to, right? It's just
Yes.
the water that we swim in. Hey, you need to write the book, Dating as a Therapist. That may not be the title, but, I think there's a book there,
There might be a
the
book there. Yes.
adventures of dating as a therapist and how that's difficult. Alright,
Yes.
question number 2.
Mhm.
When did you last feel truly seen? Not as a therapist, but as a person. Man, this
You
whole
know,
episode can just be these 5 questions.
yeah, I'm gonna say that one of the areas that I'm thriving in my life is I have a lot of really
Mm,
good friends.
nice.
So I, go hiking, meet friends for meals, coffee,
Yeah.
go on weekend trips with friends. So honestly, I felt seen on Sunday. I feel seen. I feel like I at least once a week I'm with a friend where I feel like I am really seen by that person. So that's one of the areas that I know I'm doing well, and that my healing has allowed for the depth of friendships to really become present in my life.
I have this thing called Fuck It Fridays. I'm gonna have this other thing called Seen on Sundays, and
Mm,
Sundays is when you make sure that you are seen. That's when you
mm,
call the friend or surround yourself with people who really see you,
yeah.
validate you.
I try to do
Alright.
at least one meeting, like one sort of get together. We're coming into winter now, so the hiking season's over, but during summer, at least one hike a
Yeah.
week with someone, and we go into great, depth conversation and bonding. So,
It's prescribed. Okay,
yeah.
question number 3.
Yep.
Have you ever stayed in a relationship you knew was unhealthy because you couldn't face your own advice?
Um Not as a therapist. So this like, prior to becoming a therapist,
Oh, right. Mhm.
yes, was in a relationship I knew wasn't healthy, and I stayed in it because I was terrified of being single. I think I felt like I would die if I wasn't in a
Yeah.
relationship, so I stayed longer than I should have.
I mean, that's common.
Yeah,
So many people can relate to that. Thank you. Number 4, what emotion do you struggle most to allow yourself to feel?
probably anger.
Mm.
I have struggled, so when I get really triggered, I can get very
Mm.
angry. So I think in my healing journey has been this question of what anger is valid and healthy to, like, move through, and what is an overreaction that I can reframe to not be so angry, right? And so trying to find that wiggle room of, no, there are certain circumstances that, like, this is wrong and it's okay to be angry right now.
Yes, thank you. And then finally, number 5, what part of your childhood shows up most in the therapy room?
What part of my childhood shows up the most in a therapy room? The part that fawns, the part that, wants to take care. I learned to be very attuned as a child. I can fawn to
By
other people's
survival,
by
seems like.
survival,
Yeah.
right, and it can fawn to people's needs, and so I think my challenge is remaining in my sovereignty as an individual person while meeting theirs, and there's a part of me that, like, this childhood wound is like, almost emerging to take care of and coddle, and that's not therapy, that's not helpful, right? So, really staying connected to the me, the witness, and engaging is the adult self, but that child self that just can want to avoid conflict, I guess, would be that
Yeah.
child self. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being so honest.
Yeah, absolutely, those were
Yeah.
good questions.
All right, we are moving into now not number 3 in the series, and I'm gonna let you lead.
Yeah. So this part of the series is about how to heal these wounds. So we've talked about the process of the core dilemmas that come up around how a child needs to keep the parent in good standing, right? They need to feel like they're safe with the parent and that the parent loves them. And so when there's misattunement, when there's harm or neglect, that child is going to shame themselves. And that's where all of these negative beliefs come up around the self and these wounds and the shame, essentially. And then so much of our life then becomes tiptoeing or having strategies around how not to feel shame. How do we get around these parts of us that have shame? That shame's going to create a lot of anxiety. We can move towards addictions. We can move towards avoidance. And so then the question is, how do we heal? How do we heal that shame? So within the neuroaffective relational model, NARM, which is the model that I use,
Can we remind everyone what NARM stands for?
yes, it's the neuroaffective relational model. And that is the model for healing this complex trauma that I use. I found the most effective. So the founder, Dr. Larry Heller, what he calls this process, it's called both the shame disidentification process. So we have taken on these shame identifications in ourselves and we're disidentifying from them. So I said this in the last episode, and I'll say it again, the shame isn't real. It feels real. It feels
Right.
like this part of me is bad, but it never was bad. You had to believe that it was bad to survive this relationship, to think
Mm,
that this person was loving you when they weren't being loving in that moment. But we've identified with the badness, with that shame. And so how do we disidentify from it? Because it's never a part of your capital S self. That's not actually who you are, right? It's just a belief that we are identifying with it as a protection. And so what this process is also called is the emotional completion process. So in these moments, when a child is shaming themselves, it's disconnecting them from the primary emotion that would have been present at that time. And naturally that those emotions would have been a combination of sadness and anger, right? Something is
mhm.
happening that shouldn't be happening, or something isn't happening that should be happening. I'm being treated in a way that I don't deserve, and that's both gonna create a protest of anger and deep heartbreak that that's happening in general, and that that's happening from these people that I love deeply, right? My parents, we are so in love with our parents. That's just the natural attachment bond.
Yeah. And I think also because our parents are kind of like, our gods when we're children,
Absolutely.
they can't be wrong. So the default is we are wrong or we are bad. There is no other option. When you're 5, you don't look at your dad, you're like, "Oh, he's got no emotional intelligence. He's being
No,
activated." Or
he is.
you just think like, "Oh, I'm bad because he says I'm bad, or because he's angry, that means that I'm bad or I did something wrong."
Right, and the younger the child is, the more they're gonna have the parent in that godlike figure because the more vulnerable and dependent they are on that parent. They have to believe that that person has the capacity to protect them from that big outside scary world that the kid
Yeah.
is overwhelmed by and doesn't understand. And so this process is about, and I'll like walk through some of the steps, but the general process is about coming into contact with a moment when that shame developed from our adult consciousness now. So being in our adult consciousness, recalling a moment and then being able to walk through how we're relating to that now and what as we do that and connecting to the emotions that would have been there. So the actual anger and sadness that didn't get to be felt and moving through that emotion. As I'm saying that, it sounds almost too simple and easy, but that emotion it's really deep. Like when
Yeah.
clients go into this isn't like, "Oh, I'm a little sad." Like it's sobbing sometimes. Like there was really deep heartbreak that was protected by that shame. But moving through, it's not always sobbing. But it can be, and moving through that emotion, making contact with it, then it frees up. That strategy of shaming yourself isn't needed anymore because we can be with what that primary emotion really is.
So when we're younger, we default to shame because we disassociate with the emotion that needs to be felt, right? So, as a kid, instead of allowing yourself to feel anger or sadness, or whatever, we block that, we kink that, and then we go to, I'm wrong, I'm defective, I'm not enough, whatever. So then as an adult, a lot of the healing is now practicing leaning into the emotion, connecting instead of disconnecting with the emotion, the feeling, instead of defaulting to shame, correct?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that shame is protective of those emotions. If you weren't to shame yourself for that moment, it's actually a really, really sad moment. And sometimes it's easier to connect to that emotion by envisioning it as a kid that you know now that you love. Sometimes
Yeah.
even, like, in the memories, we're so entangled with this, like, we're just holding on to the shame. There's times I'll use myself, like, I envision myself in this past situation. It still feels bad. It still feels like I was the bad one in the situation, but if I were to take a kid that I nannied and put him in that situation, or younger kids that I'm around. I don't have kids of my own yet, but imagine them in their innocence in that situation. It's so clear. It's so
Right.
clear that it's not that kid's fault. And then that's where some of that healing can happen of being able to see that it's the same for you. Right? It's the same for me. I didn't deserve that either. And it's raw there.
Yeah, it's almost like the practice of learning how to feel things that you didn't allow yourself to before, which kind of is a general broad stroke prescription for life and therapy in general.
Totally. I think
Yeah.
where this feels very specific to me is that people, they're not even aware, right? They're not even
Right.
aware that, something even like for me when I was a kid, if I got angry, I was immediately sent to my room. And I would have to stay in my room until I was
Mhm.
calm. And then I would have to come and apologize for being angry. And that's not developmentally what children need, right? If they're angry, there's something that's feeling not right that they're trying to communicate, and they need help communicating what feels bad, and they need help on how to be with all of that energy and that upset, and they need the adult there to help them co-regulate to calm down. And by sending a kid to their room by themselves, they actually can't truly calm down. They're going to just dissociate and disconnect and shame themselves for the anger. To say like, "Oh, yes, we're just gonna be with the emotion that we haven't been with." Well, a lot of people don't know that they haven't been with it, right? Like, we need holding to
Mhm.
be like, "Oh, the anger wasn't the problem. My parents' response to that anger was the problem. I had no
Right.
support in feeling that anger." And then from there, and if I imagine another kid in that situation, for me, yeah, I wanna be with them. I wanna be, I'm like, "I know this is hard right now, and, like, can you share anything more? What are you angry about?" And it's okay that you're angry about that, holding boundaries, of course. We're not gonna throw things, we're not gonna hurt people. Does your body need to move this emotion? And I'm right here for you while you're angry. Your anger does not threaten our connection. I still love you. That's a whole different relationship than what I had. And so then it's, going back and envisioning myself at that age and grieving and holding that inner child in the way that I wish I had been held. That's where a lot of that
Yeah.
healing to anger happens.
Do you ever wonder how you would be as an adult if you received this kind of safe space from parents?
Yes. I mean, sometimes I like laugh at myself of like, how amazing would I be if I didn't have
Yeah.
all my trauma, right? Like, what capacity would I have being out in the world
Or confidence or
creating, and my
security, or yeah.
confidence and my
Yeah.
relationships, and, like, yes, like, how different would I be if I hadn't yes, if I hadn't had this trauma, if I hadn't had to spend, most of my 20s healing. I'm in my 30s now, still healing, right? What would I be like? And it's interesting, and I probably would be pretty amazing. I probably wouldn't be a therapist, right? Because
Mm.
the
You wouldn't have
journey
gone to therapy.
I
You
wouldn't
maybe
maybe
wouldn't
have
need
gone to
yeah,
therapy, or the journey
yeah.
of feeling like I need to figure out what is happening to me and why and how to heal
Mhm.
it is what led me to wanna help others heal, right? So
Right.
yeah, it's an interesting question, but my whole life would be different.
I think you would also be very alone because there aren't many people who have had amazing parents who held that kind of space.
That's
And
true.
I don't know anyone in my circle who grew up with a lot of emotional safety. And
Mhm.
I mean, most people, what we're talking about is the masses, most people.
Oh,
And it's because
absolutely.
our parents didn't know. It's not that they were monsters.
Nope.
They also had parents that didn't hold space for them. It's just a generational transmission process.
And there was actually a generational education that was harmful. So, my parents went through they were taught, like, the parenting education of the time was to let your babies cry it out, to put your toddlers in timeout, to send your kids to the room when they're angry, but learn to
Yeah.
to not
And
be
then
angry, right?
before that, there was the belt and spankings,
Right.
and so
So it's I'm not bringing my deepest trauma into this podcast, but partially intentionally, right? Because I want if you're listening to this, I do want the message to be that those moments that we might easily write off as, oh, that was just my parents doing the best they could. They didn't know better. That's true. And it still had a lasting impact. That moment would be so confusing to a child. And that's going to impact the relationship to self and the capacity to be with anger and regulate themselves through anger.
recently, maybe 6 months ago, it was actually right before the fires. I was driving around with my mom, and my mom's old school Korean. We were talking about the past. We rarely talk about the past. We also have a language barrier, so it's hard to communicate. And she said very casually, when you were a kid, mom and dad, we came to America first, and just because we had no money, we wanted to make sure that we can do this, and we left you and your brother in Korea. I was like, what? How old was
Whoa.
I? Because I came to America when I was 3. So that
Mm.
means that when I was around 2, they left me in Korea for a year.
Wow.
And, from her perspective, I was like, "Oh, that's logical." They wanted to kinda pave the way, make sure they had jobs and, etcetera, so that they left me in Korea with, I think, grandparents or something. But then once I thought about if I could do that to, my daughter or what that would be like,
Huh.
I just started to almost cry because I was thinking, "Holy shit, how confusing it would be for her as
Yes.
a 2-year-old if parents were suddenly gone for a year." And even if she had, grandparents or relatives or whatever, mom and dad are gone for a
Yes,
year.
and traumatic, like, not just confusing, right? Like, as a two-year-old, there's no if they're just gone, there's a bond that's breaking with a deep,
Yeah.
deep, deep attachment with no understanding of why or where, and there's gonna be, like, a foreclosure of the heart that happens in that moment. It's really deep abandonment. It would be experienced as abandonment, right? It wasn't intended to be. It had really great intentions and they came back, but the child, like, you would have experienced it that way. They're just gone. And
Yeah, and
that
I think, I'm fast to minimize it, but I also wonder how that, imprinted in me. I also wonder how I show up in relationships is partly because of that.
I'm sure. Are you familiar with, Gabor Mate?
Yes.
So he speaks a lot about how, his parents were in the Holocaust and gave him to a neighbor, I think around 6 months old, and that when they came back and I don't remember the exact time they were gone, it was a number of months. He wouldn't even make eye contact with them for another number of months. He wouldn't open his heart again to them. And that
God.
even now, he'll tell the stories of, like, his wife, being not able to pick him up from the airport, and he goes into this trigger of being abandoned, and it's the six-month-old, right? Like, it's just such a core young wound, and so for you at 2, I would imagine that would impact you in similar ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm still, exploring and trying to figure out what imprint that left on me and how that has manifested today in my relationships. I tend to swing toward anxious, and there's, other things like, with intimacy and sex and being kind of anxiously attached,
Yeah.
how much it contributes to that.
I'm just holding for you too. I'm curious, like, that's a huge thing to not have known about your childhood.
We don't talk about shit. We're like she's like,
That's
"How's lunch?"
big.
Like, "What are you
Yeah.
doing?" We have logical conversations. We don't have, very surfacey, and,
Mhm.
part of it is because she just doesn't speak English well, and I don't speak Korean well,
Mhm.
but also she's not that type of person, the guy. So on top of that, I didn't grow up with a mom who was holding me and saying I love you
Yeah.
and what I call emotional milk. She was just very like she bought me Levi's. She bought me, she
Mm.
made sure I had cool skateboards. She did a
Right.
lot of things to make me American or make sure that I fit in, but she didn't have any tools to be like a very
Yeah.
loving, empathetic, present
Or
mom.
to
She
really
was working all
see
the
you.
time.
Yeah,
Or yeah, or see me. And also same thing with dad. So I'm sure that impacted my brother and I as well.
of course.
So what do I do now?
Well, I when we're looking at that impact, I mean, how is that for you right now as you're connecting to that they couldn't see you?
It's something I've sat with, but when I heard it the first time, lots of emotions and lots of feeling sad, especially when I imagined me and my wife leaving my daughter at that age for a year. I don't even know how that's. And also back then we didn't have cell phones. There was no FaceTime. Like
Right,
just the idea of not seeing your child for a year when they're two or both children.
right,
I don't even know. Like I feel bad for them. How did they do that? How did they like? I would be crying at night. Like 2 weeks in.
right. Which I think also might speak to their own disconnection, right? Like, how much did they have to disconnect from their heart and their emotion to
Yeah.
survive that distance from you as well? And it sounds like so I wanna reflect here, like, as when you're talking about how you've been with it, that you're able to connect to that primary sadness, right? That's just tragic. You
Well,
lost
I
your
I I I am like a skipping stone across a pond, but mostly I minimize. I think, oh, of course they did, and because they did that, it's a good thing because then they paved their way, or they, did whatever, so we had some money or safety. I don't sit there and sit in my feeling. I just feel like, oh, that was what they had to do to get us to America,
Hmm,
and also, I'm fine. Like
I'm fine.
I'm
Yes.
fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
As you've made your entire career about, healing attachment wounds in relationships.
Yeah.
Right. So you are fine objectively, but I do wanna go back because there was a moment that you connected to that sadness. It is sad.
Mhm. Uh-huh.
Right, and it sounded like there's a tenderness of it's so sad that and it's not making them bad for it, right? That what they had to do to create this life for you and your is your brother, your sibling?
Yeah. Yeah, older brother.
That that they had to leave you behind and you lost your parents for a year is really sad. And it's being in that sadness that's where we come into back into the reality and back into ourselves and ourself versus any sort of like either the child, like the young child would probably say like they left me because I was bad, right? And that there's something wrong with me that they left me. So that could be there. Or even my feelings didn't matter because they had to do it to survive is still a semblance of shame, right? There's still this disregarding of yourself and your feelings because it's what they needed to do, and those aren't equal. They did need to do it, and that didn't make it okay for you. It still was, it's tragic that both couldn't happen at the same time and that you had to experience that loss while they were doing that. And it's okay for it to be sad while they were doing the best they could.
You know what makes me really sad is, a two-year-old being confused. For some
Yeah.
reason, that really hits
Mm.
as opposed to a
Yeah.
two-year-old, of course, missing parents, longing, whatever, but, like, the child being confused, like, "Oh, where's mom and dad? They're gone.
Yeah.
Are they coming back? What happened? Is there something wrong with me?" Man, that makes me
Yeah.
that makes me sad, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's definitely disassociation there. There's definitely, "Oh, that happened. It's over there, and I'm okay, I'm fine." Like, there isn't really a connection as far as, like the only connection and the only sadness I feel is when I think about either my daughter or someone else or even my brother, imagining them going through it, that makes me feel sad. And, of course, if I imagine myself as a child being confused and mom and dad left, yeah, that would also be sad as well. But, I think there was a little disassociation.
Yeah, and that's normal. That's what I was speaking to a bit earlier is that we're so entangled in these strategies and these the wiring that happened for us to survive, right? Like whatever did happen in that moment for you of like, well, it doesn't matter, or maybe I'm bad, and then they come back and you're just like, okay, well, it's in the past. Like, who knows all of those things that you did to psychologically survive a very confusing situation, potentially scary situation, and sad if when we can soften into it is, I mean, really in your wiring, right? And at 2 years old, your brain is growing those neural networks so quickly and is growing
Yeah.
around that too, right? And so that's where it's hard to see it in ourselves that it even matters because we've pushed it away that it doesn't matter. We've pushed that part of ourselves away that it doesn't matter to survive it, and it's only when we can really see, "Oh, my daughter, if then my daughter went through that too, that would be devastating." It's like, you're the same, right? Like, you were the same value, the same cuteness, the same
Mhm.
innocence and vulnerability as she was up to. And then that's where we can connect back into our hearts and just acknowledge that sadness that happened, that it did matter.
Mm. I think for anyone who immigrated here, because once we came to America, it didn't get better. My mom worked, 17 hours a day at a convenience store,
Wow.
equivalent to like a 7-Eleven. It was Georgia stop and go.
Okay.
And my dad was always working, so they threw us into like a daycare, or our neighbors watched us. I don't remember a lot of that time, and so much. I mean, I could have been sexually abused. I don't know. I might have been. I don't know. I was. And then I'm trying to think. Like my wife and I like work from home, and we're with our daughter for every dinner. For we
Yeah.
pick her up from school, like all this stuff. And I'm trying to think like, wow, I grew up. Parents were gone all the
Yeah.
time, and so like, I don't know, that must have, impacted me in some way,
Mhm.
just always be in daycare or at the neighbor's house, daycare,
Right.
neighbor's house, parents were never home. On top of that, not being kind of emotionally present, they, gave us food and roof over our heads, but man, it almost makes me feel like I was an orphan,
Mm.
you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and then we come back to that element of neglect, and of course, it's not intentional, right? And that's really comes back to what I was talking about capitalism early in the recording in our conversation, right? Like, the neglect was happening because your parents were working so, so hard to provide, to financially be able to support you, that there wasn't that emotional connection that you really needed.
So let me ask you, people who can relate to this or people who are curious,
Yeah.
man, what would be some of, like, I mean, maybe you don't know, but, like, practical things they can do other than get into a room and, start doing therapy. You also have a course,
I do
which will be
have
in
the
the show
courses,
notes.
so
Yeah.
yeah, for this part, I do wanna really talk about the course for a moment. So I do have a mini course if you're interested to just hear how I talk about this stuff within the course. That's only $45, and then I have a full 5-module course that's gonna go much deeper into this particular wounding and how we can really be with it and questions we can how to hold that in ourselves and move through this to help you get into that emotional completion process to disidentify from that chain. So the information for that is in the show notes.
Yeah. Do you think, because one of the things I write about, and something I really believe in, is how a corrective relationship can be healing.
It's
So,
yes.
speaking of being single and choosing, who you wanna love and be with, I think in our world, we put so much weight on chemistry and the lightning in the bottle and, all of that stuff, forgetting that we're actually setting ourselves up for something that could possibly be either damaging again, getting us to repeat old patterns, or something corrective. And corrective doesn't always feel good. Corrective
No,
isn't always sexy.
corrective.
Corrective can be boring,
Corrective can be terrifying because what a corrective
terrifying, yeah.
experience does is it shows you what real love looks like, and it puts it right in your face what you haven't experienced before. And if you can let that in, you're gonna go into the grief of all the times you weren't loved. So it can be terrifying. It's
Mhm.
healing. It can be quite scary. People push it away because 'cause they're really afraid of that grief.
Well, let me ask you this,
Yeah.
if someone says, "Well, how do I know if something's corrective?" What would you say?
There's a recognition of, "I'm safe here when I didn't think I was safe." So share something vulnerably with a partner, and instead of them judging and being like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you, la 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 la," whatever. They'd be like,
Right.
"Oh, wow, thank you so much for sharing that with me." It's just kind of this moment of like, "Whoa, I was received. I said something scary. They're grateful for it, and I feel closer to them."
Mhm,
And now
mhm.
if there's gonna be this opening of what's possible in connection, what's possible in being accepted for who you are versus what you're used to, which is rejection or judgment or being shamed. How do we put that into words? There's a sense of I'm okay here. This didn't hurt me,
Yeah.
right?
And this is might be simplifying, but it's giving yourself something relational that you never gave before. You give yourself or
Mhm,
experienced before maybe, you know?
mhm.
So that could be so many things. It could be, like you said, feeling safe, expressing yourself and not getting defense. It could be also if you've been objectified most of your life, it might be being in a relationship where you are not objectified. And before you even get to feeling safe in this, you may resist and feel like, oh, if this person's not objectifying me, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
So in behavior, that might be you doing everything you can to get your person to objectify you because that's what you're used to, or what you put value on. And when someone doesn't, that may feel boring. You may push that away or feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me. So like you almost have to
Mhm.
swim past all of that to even know if something's corrective.
Yes, and I think sometimes too, like yes, it might be a little bit more boring, but that's because it's safe. But I do think we can resist that boring because, oh, it's safe, but it's not safe, right? Connection is our greatest desire and deepest fear. If someone's in front of you and they're like, "I'm here, I see you, and I'm still here. I genuinely like you. I'm not gonna pull away." That can feel terrifying to someone where that's never been safe. Like the
It's
safe
safe, but it's scary.
Right, it's safe, but it's scary, and the
Yeah.
safety can even feel unsafe, right? Because it's like, well, if I let my guard down and feel safe here, then I'm more vulnerable to getting hurt. Yeah, and then again, part of that terror is, am I gonna get hurt again in the ways I've been hurt? But also, if I don't get hurt, then I have to grieve. It helps those corrective experiences are really what help put people, uh well, my words are jumbled here. Allow people to make contact with the fact that the way they were treated before was not their fault, right? Because if you can be treated well now, then it meant that that was always possible then. And all of a sudden, it just becomes so clear how mistreated you were in moments that you really needed love and support.
Yes, all things to look at, especially I gotta say when you're single. And I think one of the best things about being single is that you have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a choice when you're not in a when you're in a relationship as well, but it's much harder when tracks are laid or you've built a life with someone. When you're single, you definitely can choose. And so I think a lot of dating is actually discovering what is corrective, what is healthy, what is something that I need,
Mhm.
not just what is hot and what am I attracted to.
Right. And finding that line too of we need attraction still, right?
Mhm.
But we also need depth. We need emotional intimacy.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
how do we find that within attraction? And how do we hold
Well,
that balance of love and sexuality, right?
yeah, and I think it
That's
feeds
important.
into each other because without depth, attraction will fade. I think. I think depth is what
Yes,
fans the flames as well.
absolutely.
Skin hunger alone is not going to have any legs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's that, the Gottman model talks about the successful couples are the ones that are best friends. Right? It's not just sex. Yeah.
No. No. Yeah, and as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about, how I've been in most of my relationships and what my patterns are.
Mm,
I definitely have put sex, chemistry, attraction very high, and I've also left relationships too early, or maybe as a way of not working on myself or the relationship. And I've convinced myself that something is over because it is boring or because it doesn't match my blueprint or what I want. Like, a
yeah.
lot of the things that I should have sat with
Hmm.
and explored and worked through.
Yeah. I can share it in myself. I definitely prior would end up in relationships where, yeah, like that attraction was really high. And that dopamine rush of this feels so good, we're having so much fun was there, but there wasn't the depth. We weren't connecting. We weren't good friends. And so then it's like as soon as conflict comes up, the conflict is almost like feels so much bigger because there's not a foundation of like, we're in this together to even come
Mm.
back into because we've never been in it together. We've just been having fun. That makes sense there. And it's common to go there because if love was never safe, sexual attraction and that honeymoon phase feels so good, so we're gonna chase that. We don't know how to connect. That's where the work is because that emotional intimacy has always been so scary.
I think though eventually one or both want something deeper. They want, besides the great sex, they're gonna want to make love. They're going to want eye contact. They're gonna want deeper moments. And if people aren't willing to go there, this is when people start to have changed. They start to be unattracted, or they start to get curious about other relationships, or they
Yes.
just drift, or you know,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I would be that person in the relationship actually at a certain point, I'm like, "I wanna get to know you much deeper," and my
hmm
partners wouldn't have that capacity. Or get to a point where it just doesn't work.
See, this is why it's good just to be single. It's so much. It's
It's
so much
simpler.
heavy lifting.
It is a more simple life, but I think it's a
Yes.
lot less fulfilling. There's a
Sure.
certain
Yeah,
satisfaction that comes
of
with
course.
being in a partnership and, yeah, going through life together, working through the meaningful conflicts and getting through it increases, the connection increases, the fulfillment increases, the love, like, it adds depth to your life.
Yeah, yeah, I do agree. Hey, I want to thank you for creating this dialogue, walking us through all of this series. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. I think it's
absolutely.
so many people are gonna get so much out of this series. So again, if you didn't listen to part one or part two, just go back and check those out. And where to find Rebecca, all in the show notes.
Yes.
And yeah,
Yeah, well,
and also thank you for being transparent, for being
mm,
not a cardboard cutout when it comes to the therapist, because that's kind of
absolutely.
been my mission, you know.
And that is very aligned with my mission, so I appreciate you inviting that into the space as well. And thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed these
Thank you.
conversations.
Thank you for listening. Be well.